So last time we asked the question, why do you exist? Why are you here? I asked that question. My dad's asked that question. My dad's 89 years old, and he's not in great health. He's asked this question of me several times. I don't know why God has me alive. I said, Dad, God has you alive because there's still a purpose for you. And the purpose, quite frankly, might be for us around him. It might not be so much that he's actively doing something, although he does, but it's his life and how it influences our lives, maybe in caring for him or whatever. So all of us have a purpose. That's what we need to understand. We're going to look at a scripture today. It helps us to understand that each and every one of us has a purpose. The question is, are you in your purpose serving God the way that brings blessing to your life, or does it bring, well, what's the opposite of blessing? Cursing? I don't know. Does it bring bad things in your life? So stick with me as we walk through 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 20 through 22. Hi, my name is Scott Gossenberger, and thanks for joining me for 7 Minutes of Truth. Today we're looking specifically at purpose. What is your purpose in life? I saw this. I play golf on Fridays with a group of guys, and there's on this big, huge block wall. Somebody took a lot of time to write this in graffiti. In large block letters, by the way. It said, "What you're looking for is not outside of you; it's inside of you." Well, that's just actually not true. I mean, I don't know. It probably made a lot of sense to whoever it is that wrote that on that block wall, but that's just not true. Our purpose is found outside of us and not inside of us. So let's look at the scripture. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 20 through 22 says, "In a large house, there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for special purposes and some for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, useful to the master, and prepared to do any good work. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart." So here's what he's saying. He's going to give us here 4 principles. Now, this is the Apostle Paul talking to Timothy. So he's talking to Timothy, and he's, as an older believer, he's saying, Timothy, let me impart this to you. Let me give you this understanding that God has a purpose for your life. God has a purpose for everyone's life. And then he uses this illustration about a house, and he says that there are instruments. There's things in the house. Some are for common use, and some are for special purposes. He's saying, essentially challenging Timothy and those who Timothy might talk to. Be the person who's used for special purposes, not the common use. So I guess in maybe modern language, we could choose to be a fruit platter or an ashtray. You get to choose. And that really is the truth. You get to choose whether you're going to be used for common purposes or for special purposes. And Paul will lay out, and we'll get into this over the next few sessions, Paul will lay out 4 ways in which we can become the special purpose that God has for us. I mentioned earlier that everyone has a purpose, and that is true. Even unbelievers have a purpose. God designed them with a purpose, and even when they don't fulfill their God-ordained purpose, it's not that they don't fulfill God's purpose, they do. We get to decide whether we're going to serve God as a protagonist or an antagonist. Even as an antagonist, we serve God's purposes. If you look at Revelation chapter 12, Revelation chapter 12 gives a description of Satan and how he was working to try and destroy the gospel message through Jesus, and he's displayed as a dragon who stands in front of the woman who's giving birth to a child, but he can't destroy the child. Then later he tries to destroy the offspring of the child, which is the Jews, and then he can't destroy the Jews. So anyhow, Satan's serving a purpose. His purpose is as an antagonist. And there are lots of people in this world who serve God's purpose as an antagonist. We can even serve God in less than our ideal, whatever that might be, our ideal purpose. God's called me to be a pastor, and for a number of years, I've served God as a pastor faithfully. Here's the beautiful thing. Right now, I have a job as a pastor. I receive an income by serving the church that I lead. Now, there's going to come a day, I don't know how soon, but there's going to come a day when I won't be serving the church as an employee or as a paid pastor. But my calling won't end then. I might be in an old folks home. I guess they don't call them that anymore. Senior living, assisted living. I might be in that place someday, but I will be walking down the halls with my walker, going to lead a Bible study for a bunch of other old people in that facility, because my calling doesn't end. Calling and career are not the same thing. God has a calling for you, but it doesn't have to necessarily be your career. Now, let's go back to the idea of antagonist and protagonist, because there's a lot to that, and I don't want to spend a ton of time there, but let me just help you understand. When Paul was on this earth, and while he wrote 2 Timothy, he wrote a lot of these letters from prison. And there were antagonists who didn't like Paul preaching the gospel, so they had him put in prison. When he went back to Jerusalem, the Pharisees and others didn't like the fact that he was leading people out of the Jewish faith, so they had him thrown in prison. He eventually made it to Rome. You say, well, that just really got in the way of God's purpose. Nope. As antagonists, they serve God's purpose because he wrote the book of Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon from prison. Had he not been thrown in prison, he likely would not have written those letters, and we likely would not be reading them as we do today. So, in their antagonism towards the gospel, they actually fulfilled God's purpose. They lost out on the blessing while Paul received a blessing. You and I have the same option. So we're going to take a few sessions to really talk about God's purpose for your life out of 2 Timothy chapter 2. How do we discover? What does it take to discover God's call for my life? So stick with me over the next few sessions. I encourage you to like and subscribe so that you can be updated when a new session comes out on YouTube. We'd love to see you with us. God bless you. Have a great day.